guys! There is something approaching a near gale blowing outside today, so there might be some weird background noises in this video, and I do apologize. I've left my small lavalier mic back at my house, so we'll have to make do with the built-in mic in the camera. Like some of you may know, I had some engine troubles this last November on the trip from Randers to Skive. And I think I've mentioned it in one or two of my previous videos that before doing either a rebuild of my existing engine or purchasing a new engine, there's one thing I'd like to try. And by the way, I am really crossing my fingers that I don't need a new engine, because those are really expensive. Yeah, anyway, this is the stuff. Lec Wec, I guess. I have no idea how to pronounce that, but there'll be a link in the description. And I think this stuff was actually recommended in 2 or 3 separate comments on some of my previous videos, so yeah, we'll give it a try. Real quick, I want to tell you guys what I experienced back in November. I first discovered there was oil under the engine, so I cleaned that up and I checked the engine and the gearbox. And I discovered that the gearbox was completely dry, so I added some oil to the gearbox and went for a quick sail. It seemed like there was no more oil leaking. However, on the trip from Randers to Skive, after running the engine for 8 hours I think, there was oil under the engine again, and also oil had sort of sprayed or misted all over the port side of the engine compartment, the lower half sort of, and that's where the air intake is located. So I am sort of 99.9% sure that that was where the sort of misted or sprayed oil was coming from. So I might be dealing with both a leaky gearbox, which is located back here. Now I don't know if it's in frame or not, but you get the idea. And then of course also whatever is causing oil to be thrown out the air intake, which is located right there. And you can actually see, I don't know if you can see it on camera, but I can see that there's some oil right there. Which is actually kind of weird, because I haven't run the engine since I winterized it. Before winterizing the engine, I cleaned it thoroughly, and that's why I think it's a bit odd that there's a drop of oil on the air intake. And also, there's oil under the engine again, and like I mentioned, it hasn't run since I winterized it, so it must be dripping from somewhere even though the engine isn't running. So there's the oil from the air intake, and also there seems to be oil located under the gearbox, and the engine bed is sort of raised in the middle, so the oil back there I think that can only be coming from the gearbox. But the oil in front here, that might be coming from either of those places. Okay, so I guess a good first step would be to check the dipstick in the engine and then clean up the oil under the engine. So I don't know if the camera is going to be able to pick this up, but the color of this oil clearly indicates that this engine hasn't been running after I winterized it. And before winterizing it, or after winterizing it in fact, I cleaned it thoroughly, so there must be a leak somewhere dripping even though the engine isn't running. But at least the engine doesn't seem to have lost any oil, so I guess that's a good thing at least, right? So let's see if we can clean up this oil without getting it all over the nice carpet. Yeah, there's definitely a good amount of oil in there. I'd like to remove the air intake filter. Now, I don't know if that's going to give me any kind of conclusions, but at least I've looked in there, right? I have no idea if this is significant or not. So this connects to this hose, which connects to the air intake filter, and I did notice a little bit of oil here when removing this. Now I have a basic understanding of what goes on inside a diesel engine, and I would like to underline the word basic here. So when looking in here, well, I basically have an idea of what I'm looking at, but I have no idea of what it's supposed to look like. So I noticed some oil on the threads of this bolt right here, but yeah, I don't know if that's a bad thing or not. Okay, so I've put everything back together. While looking up how to clean this air filter, I discovered that this might be called the strainer for the crankcase ventilation, and supposedly that's supposed to be cleaned just as often as you would clean this. So, well, at least that's done now. So I'm supposed to add most of this bottle to the engine, but there should be just enough left for the gearbox. And don't worry, my gearbox uses the same oil as the engine, not transmission fluid as some of the newer gearboxes. So now comes my absolute least favorite part of this job, checking the dipstick in the gearbox. My cockpit lockers have become quite moldy during the winter, so before going down there I might as well just give them a quick clean. So going down here was kind of cute the first time, just sort of exploring and figuring out where everything was. Now it's just become a real pain because the space is so confined down here. Oh well. Oh, okay, so the Lec Wec has been added to the gearbox, and hey, I might just spend the rest of the weekend down here. Okay, so there's a bit of good news. What I had thought was oil under the gearbox turned out to be mostly water and then just a few drops of oil on top of that. And the best part, the gearbox doesn't seem to have leaked any oil during the winter. Of course, it hasn't been running, but still, I think it's great news. Next up, let's get the engine running. I think it's so awesome how this 42-year-old engine, it just turns on like that the instant you turn the key. There's no coughing, there's no issues, it just turns on. And it's like that every single time. Apart from the issues with oil coming out from wherever, it's a lovely engine. I'm not going sailing today, but at least I found out that the engine still works, and I've added the Lec Wec. Judging from what I've read, this stuff takes a while to work its magic, so I'm not expecting any kind of instant results here. To be quite honest, I'll be surprised if this fixes the issues I've been having, but considering the alternatives, why not give it a try? Okay guys, that's it for this video. See you! To make do with the built-in camera. Mic camera. Ah. So now comes my absolute least favorite part of this, checking the dipstick, Jesus. Same oil as the engine and not transmission fluid as some of the fluid. Jökull and I hope you've enjoyed this video. To be notified about new content, please click subscribe. If you're new to the channel, I suggest you check out the introduction playlist. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up and feel free to leave a comment.